So can you tell me a little bit, just in a nutshell, sort of what you emailed me about? Just kind of tell
Okay,
us your story.
so I emailed to say thanks for the food plans because I joined the meal plans. I don't know, it's been a little over a month ago, I think. Um, and I hate cooking. I'm not good at cooking. I'm finally learning in my 50s. um, but I've been a vegetarian for a couple decades now. But for a long time, I was a very bad vegetarian. I basically ate a lot of processed foods, pizza, vanilla wafers, everything that's already fixed. Um, Lots of cheese, plenty of dairy, things like that. And I uh, found out my cholesterol was 336 about a year ago, which is shocking. Shocking. I mean, that's horrible. I've never heard of anybody having it quite that badly. It scared me. And I knew my cholesterol had been high. It's been high since I was in my 20s. But that was enough to make me realize there's a big problem here. And I had just come out of a couple very hard years personally. I was trying to get back on track, get my life back together. And so I started researching what can I do besides being on a statin that will work. And whole foods, plant-based eating is what kept coming up. So I'm like, okay, I need to quit eating the packaged crackers and all that stuff I lived on and started adding more in. Now, at times I feel like I made a big change. Other times I don't because it's just plants, which I already ate anyway, but I just sort of removed the worst stuff. In 3 months' time, I dropped my cholesterol down into the 100s. Now, that was also going on a statin at the same time, but I don't think it would have dived over 200 points in just 3 months' time with just the medicine alone. And now I'm a year later, and it's continued to go down. I had a check a couple months ago, and it's at 111, which is incredibly low. My medicine has been cut in half. My goal is to get off it altogether.
Awesome. So, yeah, and I think, that 336, that is a really high number, especially for not eating meat. And so it's a really good thing to bring up. I mean, I myself was vegetarian like my whole life, and I've never eaten meat, but I did, like you, I ate like processed food and a lot of cheese pizzas and a lot of macaroni and cheese and a lot of, in your email, you mentioned like cream in your coffee. And yeah, like I did all of that. And so it's a really good thing to shine light on that. Hey, even if you don't eat meat and you're following a vegetarian diet, like your numbers can still get really high because you're still consuming animal products.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you made that switch then from vegetarian to whole food plant-based, or almost whole food plant-based, what were some of the like obstacles for you or some of the challenges for you?
Well, one, spending the time cooking and like learning and how to prep things because I was used to convenience food. I was used to, eating something out of a box or a can or the freezer or a restaurant. So just taking the time to actually go and learn about some of these foods. How do I prep them? I've spent plenty of time on Google looking up stuff. My other biggest one was coffee. I was like, I really don't want to give up my coffee because I had read a couple things that said, coffee in some people can increase your cholesterol. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to change everything else I can first. If my cholesterol still is horrible, then I'll address the coffee issue. But for now, I'm keeping coffee. So I had to switch out what I put in my coffee. I never put sugar in it anyway, but I would put whole milk in it. And so I switched that out for plant milk. And I have to say that really, really sucked for about a month until I got used to it. It took me about a month, but now it's fine.
The cooking thing, like you didn't spend time in your kitchen, and that's, there's so much of that because people don't need to, because there's, food ready at their convenience to pop in the microwave or to just heat up or to call takeout. And this way of eating, like you can't get it in a drive-through, you can't get it. And I say it all the time, but like this way of eating, you have to spend time in the kitchen. So I think for most people, this is a very big change. And just dedicating the time that it takes to not only do it, but to learn how to do it too. Like, because that's two different things, because there's a learning curve. So can you talk a little bit about that learning curve?
Yeah. Okay. So first off, I had to learn some new fruits and vegetables that I hadn't heard of before when I start reading these recipes. It's like I know the basic ones, lettuce, carrots, potatoes, and things, but some things seem a little more exotic for someone who's been eating convenience food forever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning that. And I have to say it is a huge time investment initially because I was researching all this stuff, reading a ton of books. I was reading on the internet. Then I would go to the store and I'm literally standing there forever, like looking at everything. Like, what is this thing? And what is that thing? And what is that thing? And then learning to read labels on food. That's another thing too. Just a lot. And then getting home, chopping takes me freaking forever. I am so slow. I am the slowest person ever at chopping things, but it's worth it. I just sort of try to chill and do my thing. But it takes a lot of time. And I also had to spend a lot of time looking up, like, how do you fix something like this? Like, I still don't exactly know what you do with an artichoke, but you know what I mean? So there's some things I'm still learning, but hey, Google's great. Your meal plans are great because you guys have some very helpful tips for people who are not up to speed on some of this stuff, which I really appreciate. Um, but yeah, it's just been a learning curve. And then also learning one thing I think I've learned from your meal plan specifically is use a lot of spice, various spices. Like food tastes so much better now. I kind of, I switched the way I was eating, but I kind of was in a rut. I would just put some beans in a corn tortilla with just some vegetables and, or I'd heat up a sweet potato and then just sort of eat the same few things over and over and over again. And I can do that, but that's not very satisfying after a while. Sometimes you feel like you really want a meal or real food and things like that. And so I think one thing that I also learned was put a lot of spice in. And try this variety. You're making me branch out with the food plans by adding some new vegetables, tempeh. I had never tried that. Different things like that.
So your kitchen, your spice drawer is probably growing, and your pantry is probably having all these things that you've never heard of or never knew what to do with. Yeah. But that's also really cool. Like, I think that once you get over the initial overwhelm of like standing in the grocery store, like, where the fuck do I find dulse? What is dulse? Or like umami vinegar? What is this? Like, once the initial like kind of trauma of that wears off, the first grocery store experience with the meal plan. Well, if you have the meal plan, at least you know what to buy. If you don't have the meal plans, you're kind of going there a little bit flying blind. But that I know that like I've heard a lot of people just say, I was like in tears at the grocery store the first time because they just, you're used to going to the freezer section or, just picking up the box and not getting the individual ingredients. But I think after that initial kind of, grocery store experience wears off, that's the amount of spices and the amount of ingredients actually is what makes it kind of fun. Because you look forward to trying all these things that you've never tried, and your body is loving it because it's getting all this big, spectrum of nutrients from all these different plant foods. And so I think that's what makes it really sustainable because you don't get in a food rut when that happens.
Right. And I was definitely in a food rut. I mean, I had definitely improved my numbers by eating better, changing what I was doing, but I was eating the same few foods over and over and over again. And, at least where I am, winter is sort of coming in here, and you sometimes want something that feels more like a meal than a salad or a cold wrap or something like that, or just a peanut butter sandwich, which, I mean, I could live on. I like peanut butter, but that's really not the healthiest alternative.
Good for you for just sticking to it, because I know that a lot of people, like, sometimes just get so overwhelmed. They're like, screw it. Like, this is kind of hard. But the thing is it's only hard, like, the first couple of times. And then it gets to be, like, second nature. And then you get familiar with all of these things. And then you're kind of feeling like a badass buying all these cool kind of exotic things.
Well, and the cool thing is, like, I'm at the point now, some of the stuff I'm like, ooh, I already have that. And I already have that, like, now that I'm getting stocked on things. So it makes the grocery list a lot quicker because, I already have a certain number of things on hand. And the other ones, I'm starting to know where they are if I need to replace and replenish. So
yes, getting your initial kind of pantry stocked is huge because you're right. A lot of this stuff you'll buy only once every, 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you have it, it's like, yeah, you stock it up and then you don't need to worry about it again. So that's cool. So when you made this transition, then what else like did you start noticing? I mean, apart from like your numbers getting lower, which is awesome, but did you notice anything else in your life start to change, like how you felt or any other kind of things that came up because of this?
Well, initially, not at first. It took a little while. I was hoping like, oh, you see like instantaneous results 2 weeks from now. I'm going to be like, I've lost weight, my skin will look great and everything else. And that's not how it works. It takes a little longer, but I did start losing some weight. My numbers came down. The numbers were the biggest driver for me. I had also been diagnosed as being pre-diabetic. That has since gone away. And then it was interesting because when I had my initial appointment, when I got the 336 reading, I went back 3 months later to get another blood test. And my doctor said, hey, what have you been doing in the meantime? And I told him I had sort of switched to whole food plant-based. I cut out dairy and this and that and the other. And he said, well, how is it cutting out dairy? Do you feel better? Because I have so many patients who tell me you feel better without dairy. And I'm like, no, I really don't feel any different. Like, I don't think I would. However, now that I've been doing this for more like a year for the most part, I can say there's a definite difference when I've had dairy. Like, I've gone out to a restaurant and I've ended up getting dairy and things, or they, have something in my dish. I can tell now, and it makes me feel not good. And like my joints will hurt and I just feel more run down the next day. The other thing that I think I probably forgot to mention in my email to you is because my life had gone just completely haywire for a couple years. And I mean, it was a lot. I ended up on anxiety medicine. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was not the type of person that I would have ever thought I would have been on anxiety medicine, but there was just so much going on. I was going through a divorce after over 20 years. Both my parents were diagnosed with cancer. I had some of my pets die. My car got hit twice. It was just on and on and on and on. And
That's
it was
brutal.
Just so, yeah, it was a lot at once. But, and so I ended up on medicine. And, my goal at the time was, well, I only want to be on it, to get me through all this horrible crap that's going on in my life right now. And so after I had changed my way of eating, I transitioned off my medicine about 3 to 6 months later. And so I don't take it anymore. And you know what? I feel so happy and good. I have just such a much better outlook. I just feel a lot better. And I think a lot of that probably is food related too, that allowed me to sort of make that transition away from that. Yeah. And I'm hoping to get off my cholesterol medicine and then I wouldn't be on anything, which is awesome. And I think I can do it too. I mean, hopefully one more check and they'll be like, yeah, you can maintain it with less. So let's try it with none.
Yeah. And I'm sure that it will happen. I see it happen all the time. So it's, and it is a process. And this type of thing, like, it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's a very good point that you brought up, because I think when people start this journey, it's like, okay, this is the magic fix. This is the magic bullet. I'm going to do this. And next week, like, I'm not going to be on any medication. I'm going to be the perfect weight. My skin is going to be glowing. I'm going to be sleeping great. And it's like, for some people, it just takes longer. It's not an overnight quick fix. Like, it's not a miracle cure. The body needs time to adjust to get back to how it works. And depending on, how long, how many years we've trashed our body. And I say that, like, I used to trash my body like crazy, like, it takes a minute for the body to like make those repairs. So I think that for anybody watching this who feels like you've started this way of eating and you're seeing a little bit, but you're not where you want to be, and you're thinking about throwing in the towel, just wait, just hold up, write it out, be patient. And all of that does happen. You will feel better soon.
You will. And some of it takes time. I mean, in my case, I was shocked that my cholesterol numbers went down so quickly, but that's something that's on the inside. I mean, I don't know that they're going down until I go back and get a blood test, but it was more the external stuff that I could see or feel that took longer for me to realize that it was happening.
Yes.
To see it myself, even though internally I was obviously improving a lot. It
Yeah.
took longer for me to know that on the outside.
On the outside, that's right. And I think I mean, that's a really good point, because oftentimes when we are eating, a diet that's really high in processed foods or animal based foods, it's like we can go for a long time without knowing stuff on the inside is kind of being
Mm-hmm.
like we can really be in pretty bad shape without it actually manifesting in a way that's like your day to day is affected by it.
Right.
So I'm glad that you brought that up as well. And then once you start kind of reversing that, then the reverse is also true.
Mm-hmm.
So the body is just this machine that's designed to work and designed
Mm-hmm.
to run smoothly. And when we give it the right fuel, it generally does a pretty good job.
Yep.
We just got to get out of our way.
Exactly. And then the other thing I'll add is once I started eating this way, started eating better, then I joined the meal plans because I'm like, I hate figuring out I figured out what foods I need to be eating, but now I hate figuring out how to make meals out of it and vary it. But now that I've done that, another thing I did is I joined a gym with personal trainers. And it's been amazing. I mean, I've gained a lot more muscle. I've dropped fat. I've dropped inches. I'm eating plant-based while I'm doing it. And actually, their newsletter they just sent out, they named me Iron Lady for the for this month because I had improved so much. So, and believe me, I was never an athlete. I'm not the athletic type. It was terrifying to walk in there to sign up, but I'm like, I promised myself I would do good for myself. This was going to be my year of health. I'm getting all my medical checks, doing all my thing, eating better, changing all that. Now that I feel like I have the food part sort of under control, I'm like, I'm going to add in the exercise. So it's been amazing.
I love that. And I think like I just got chills actually, because like what I'd love to see is when people make one positive change in their life, how that can overflow into other areas of your life, and that is exactly why this is a lifestyle and it's not a diet. Like no diet has ever like changed somebody's whole life. And, people just go off from them eventually. And it's like, and a lot of people do the reverse of like, okay, I need to get healthy. So I'm going to go work out and I'm going to go just like lift more weights or run more and not think about the food component. And when people have a bunch of weight to release, it's like I always say, do the food part first. Like get that under control because that's going to make going to the gym easier. That's going to make moving your body easier. Your joints aren't going to be as inflamed. And when you just do the exercise part, it's like you're making it so much harder, So I think that's a beautiful sort of transition that you've made into that. And I love it and good for you. And by doing that, then that's going to affect other areas of your life as well.
Yeah. And I think too, like another reason to change the food first, like for me, I really think it helped with my mood. And because I would never have called myself an exerciser, even though I love going to the gym now, I needed to be feeling better about myself. I needed to be happier in order to go to the gym, or otherwise it would have been pure torture. It would have been very easy to sort of like let it fall off by the wayside, and just, I'll sign up, and then you do it for a week or two, and then you sort of suddenly don't go anymore. But I think fixing the food first was, at least for me, definitely the way to go.
Yeah, and the two things really support each other too, because the eating healthy really supports going to the gym and doing your exercises, and then exercising really supports eating well, because you want it to be in balance, and you're doing this good thing, so you want to like do something else good. Like you don't want to like have this beautiful meal and then not move your body, or move your body and then go to the drive-through, So it's a wonderful like support that you have with the movement and with the food. So I think that's wonderful. And so I'm curious, like, what does your support system look like? I know that you've gone through divorce, and I know that you're not on Facebook. So and generally, for a lot of people, it's their spouse or it's Facebook that really like they get their support from. So do you have friends who are doing this, or family, or what's that look like?
Well, I have two kids who are 21 and 18 still living at home. They're both meat eaters, but they're supportive. Their whole life I've been a vegetarian, so me eating not what they're eating has always sort of been the norm anyway.
Yeah.
But they're very supportive of it. They understand it. they were not thrilled when I first started changing my eating. I sort of cleaned out the pantry and I'm like, I know you guys still want the crackers and the chips and all these things, but I just don't want them right in front of my face all the time. So I moved them into like a basket in the next room. I'm like, you can go to the den to get your junk food and that's fine. But and they, I got a little bit of griping about that, but generally speaking, they've been really supportive. I have a friend who is eating more and more whole foods plant-based herself. And so we sort of encourage each other and help each other out. I also am on like a private online book group, but we discuss a lot more than just books. We're all people who are similar in our stage of life, older kids, things like that. And we have a discussion that we routinely have on health and things like that. And of course, people are pursuing, different ways of being healthy. But some of the people also do eat mostly whole foods plant-based or, less meat or, and adding in the exercise and things like that. So I do have some online friends I chat with too about things like that.
Nice. Yeah. And it sounds like you were really like very ready for this change and very determined and really dedicated to it. And I think that's sort of like, that's where all of us have to get to if we want change to stick. Like you can be on Facebook or you can, have a supportive partner or, friends, but it ultimately has to be you to make the change and to make the choices every single day. Yeah. So it has to start from us anyways. And I think I love that the food that you put in a basket and you put it in the other room. I really, really like that because it gets it out of your sight every day. And I think for a lot of people, they're living in a home who their kids aren't doing this or their partners aren't doing this and they don't live alone. And, I've had a lot of people email in, what do I do if there's like candy bars and there's like chips and I, can't do it. And I think it's really smart. You take all that shit and you put it someplace where you're not going to see it. And then that's a small thing to ask of your family. You can have it. It can be in the house. It just has to be in your own separate area where you're not going to go often. So I think that's really awesome.
And they can even eat it in front of me. I just don't want any. Don't offer it to me when you're eating it. And just, put it back there when you're done with it. The other thing I did was in my fridge, you always have like the meat and cheese drawer that's up high in your fridge and then the produce drawer is down at the bottom. Yeah. What I ended up doing was, the cheese and sour cream and things like that my kids have. I ended up sticking that in the very bottom drawer of the fridge because I don't see that one as much. I don't bend down for that one as much. And then putting more other things up, so like, the good stuff is all in the upper parts of the fridge, basically.
The eye level, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the easy to reach. And then I put, the cheese and sour cream down in the lowest level. And I'm like, it's down there. So if you guys want it for something, that's where it is. And, so I think they're eating less of it too, because it's down there, which is good.
Yeah. So do they eat meal plan food when you cook it, or do you cook just for yourself?
I mostly cook for myself. What I've been doing is I do 2 servings of each thing because I figure that gives me, an extra lunch or a breakfast. Or my friend who's also trying to eat better, I'll share it with her because she's super, super busy and has just an insanely crazy life. And so sometimes I'll like take her a meal over so she has something for lunch at work or whatever.
That's so nice.
She also has a child who's mostly vegan. And so this is a way for her to try some new things out because she's sort of doing, I think, a little bit the same thing I used to do, which is more convenience and processed food. So, hopefully this is a way to help, widen the scope a little bit and things like that. But my son will try it. My daughter maybe will. Not if it has tofu in it. I don't think she's going to probably touch it. She's sort of anti-tofu for some reason. But if it's just vegetables, I mean, they're willing to try it. But at this point, I'm like, you guys are old enough, you can sort of make do. I do help prep some food for them, other food that I'm not eating. But for the most part, I'm just making it for myself. And if they express interest, I let them try it. If they want to eat a serving or use up what I made, great. But if not, it's all for me, and that's okay too.
Yeah, awesome. No, I love that. I think it's a really powerful thing to be able to cook healthy food just for yourself and know that you're doing this for yourself. And that's, I mean, it sounds to me like that's really like the journey that you're on right now, is just really taking care of yourself and doing all of these things that are very proactive in helping, helping yourself support your body, and it's so important.
Yeah, and I have to say, even though I'm still so very slow at prepping, I mean, just so slow, and it takes me forever. And actually, the meal prep from last week, I finally finished prepping everything yesterday. But I'm like, okay, well, that'll get me through Sunday, and in the meantime, I'll prep the new meal plan for next week, and I'll just share a lot with my friend over the weekend.
There you go.
But I love that even though I spend time on the weekend, during the week, especially since I'm doing a little bit of extra meal stuff for myself, it's really easy to run in and grab something super quick. So it's almost like a convenience food.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. And that's why this works.
And I think that's what I have to say to anybody. Just give it a try. I'm pretty much like, as far as the meal plans are concerned, I'm open to whatever you guys are suggesting, except quinoa. I don't like quinoa. But I figure it's plants. I'll eat it. It's all probably good. And even if it's not something that might end up being my favorite taste, I'm still willing to give it a shot and eat it. And that you do find your taste buds changing.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask
a lot of sugar and salt.
Yes, fat, sugar, and salt really does a number to your taste buds. So how long did that process take for you? Are your taste buds kind of changing and enjoying the food?
I would say realistically, probably a couple months. It took me a good month to get used to plant milk in my coffee. And I mean, I did not like it either, but I'm like, I want my coffee, so I'm willing to sort of suffer with the lesser, what I considered the lesser version. Until I got used to it. And then after a month, I'm like, okay, I'm mostly used to it. But I would say overall, maybe a month to 2 months before I really started getting to where, yeah, this is good, where I'm not like, oh, I just want to get a frozen pizza out of the freezer and fix that instead, to where I'm actually looking forward to eating these healthier foods.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where it's at. Like, that's the sweet spot when you actually start to prefer these foods than what you were used to eating. Like, that's where when like you're in that zone. And that doesn't happen overnight. And it's like those cravings for salt, sugar, and fat, they can be really, really intense. And so thank you for bringing that up and for mentioning that, because I would like to remind people that your taste buds do change. And if you think it's crazy that you would ever crave a big ass salad and a, hummus wrap, you will.
Yeah, you will. And the other thing is because the one other thing that I tried to do a lot when I was starting this on my own and learning all this was cutting out oil at home. And I was still getting it in processed foods a little bit because you have a blog post, and I don't remember the title of it, and you talk about people being in sort of different areas in their journey, and you have like the leopard loincloth guy who's eating perfectly all the time, and then you have someone else who's been not eating well, and so now they're doing like the veggie burgers you buy at the grocery store and things like that, but it's still a better step. And so I was that person. I was the one who was not eating well. Then I was doing the frozen packaged vegetarian and vegan foods. Now I'm transitioning more. And when I cut out the oil and cut out more of the processed foods and things like that, I ended up eating some of like, I don't know, Skinny Pop, I think, and it's not even that bad when you read, supposedly all that bad when you read the nutrition information. That stuff was so oily.
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, this is kind of gross.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said that a few months before then. But once you transition and not having it as much, you really do notice when you're eating it. But I do notice a difference now. It does not taste as good as it used to.
Isn't that wild?
So it's like the idea is good, but if I taste it, I'm probably not going to like it as much. So it's just better for me to go, I'll just remember it as a nice thing I used to enjoy, but I don't really care that much about it anymore.
Yeah, because it will taste different, like it totally will taste different. And the cool thing is that also, like, you think about when you're kind of hungry and you kind of want a snack and you think, okay, well, an apple never really used to be appealing, but now like I'm craving an apple. And then when you go bite into that apple, all of a sudden you can taste the apple flavor, and you can like you're not only eating it, but you're like experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yep.
also true for like the really healthy stuff that you enjoy more, and then the unhealthy stuff you really enjoy less. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's that thing of, and I talk about this a lot, but it's like kind of trading in that the pleasure for joy,
Mm-hmm.
because the pleasure foods are, fun and pleasurable, but like when you really find joy in eating, it goes into a much deeper like soul level.
Yeah, and I'll say I kind of feel that way. I was out running around today before we had our meeting here, and then I ran in the house and didn't have that much time, and I had all my prepped food in the fridge, and I threw some arugula in a bowl and some of the grains and beans and the roasted red pepper sauce. Like put it on there, heated it up. It was super fast. I mean, I had food like a big bowl of food in front of me in like 3 minutes or less, and it just is satisfying on a deep, deep level. It
Totally.
was good, and I feel like I ate well. Like I feel proud of myself because
Yep.
I know I ate well,
Yep.
and I feel good because I ate well. Like physically, I feel good,
Yep.
and I feel satisfied.
I've been doing this for a really long time, eating this way for a long time, and that feeling, it never goes away. Like
Mhm.
that feeling is something that I myself have never like gotten used to or taken for granted or not noticed. Like
Mhm.
every single meal that I eat that is whole food plant based, and especially ones that I cook, because I think it's another thing of when you put in the work and then you get to enjoy like the fruits of your labor, that even
Mhm.
there's a sense of joy and pride in that as well.
Mhm.
So when you're cooking your own food and you're eating your own whole food plant based food, like for me, it never gets old. And I always have that same feeling that you're describing. So you can look forward to that, like to come. Like just it's just going to keep happening.
Well, yay! I'm glad because it is a very nice feeling. It
Yeah,
feels good. It really
yeah,
does feel good.
yeah. It
Um,
feels light. It feels right. It feels good. And plus, like like there's that feeling proud that you ate something really healthy. Your body's feeling really good, and just knowing that you're taking care of yourself.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
think that there's, as humans, we have this amazing, body that we get to live in for however long we're around. And my gosh, like we may as well take care of it, right?
Mhm. Yep, and about the thing about prepping is I feel like even though I spend the time on the weekend, I'm taking care of it, but I still sort of get the convenience food level of convenience, by having it all ready, and I
Yes.
literally just throw it together, and so it's like it feels really good to be, like, fast and good.
Yes, exactly. Every time I talk with somebody from our community, it's like it gives me a newfound sense of inspiration, and just I love talking about this shit because it's so rad.
Yeah, it is. I feel almost like an evangelist for eating this way to a certain extent. It's kind of weird, but you really want to share the
Yeah.
information with others. You really want to say, "Look, I did it and I feel good and my cholesterol improved and all these things," even though that makes me sound like I'm very old. I feel like such an old person saying that, but I was such a bad vegetarian for so long and it really harmed me.
Yeah.
And so, but if I can make the change and I can learn to cook, most people probably can then because I was definitely not a kitchen person. I'm not, I didn't do a lot of those things.
Yeah.
But you can do it, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And I will say this too. I've heard so many people say, like, a year, 2, 3 years into it, they're like, I feel younger. I look younger than I did 10 years ago. And so there's also that bit, I think that, when we reach a certain age, and if we are on medication, you feel like, okay, is this like the beginning of the end or what? Like, am
Hmm.
I just like going down? And it's like, no, you don't have to. Like, things, I mean, we can't stop aging, obviously, but we
Hmm.
certainly can have a say in how gracefully we do it and how we feel while we're doing it too.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I feel a lot better than I've felt in a very long time. And when I say a very long time, I'm meaning years.
yeah.
I didn't realize how bad I felt till I'm not feeling that way anymore because it's kind of like I wear glasses part of the time. You don't realize your vision's going bad because it's gradual
Yes.
until you put on glasses and then you go, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be able to see that." So I think that's how you kind of are with just as long as you're not having major health problems that you're aware of, you have some aches and pains, or you're a little bit slower, groggier, or things like that.
Yeah.
You don't realize it. It's just normal. It feels normal, until suddenly you're not feeling that anymore. And it's like, wait a minute, I don't have those problems now, and it's
Yes.
really amazing the change.
Yes, I love it. That's so true because we adapt. Like we get used to things. Like we as humans have a very high capacity for adaptation and adapting to our environment. And that's so true. Like if it's gradual, just a little bit every single day, man, we get used to it. Another fantastic point. Oh, it's just like everything, like the reason I do all of this that I do is like is basically summed up in our conversation.
Oh, well, yay.
It
Yeah,
really
and
is.
and you are
We're
one of the
living it.
people I found when I started researching. Your blog is one of the ones that I found when I started researching, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm reading you. I'm reading all these, Dr. Furman and Dr. Caldwell and Esselstyn and all of them, and it's like they're all saying the same thing. And I'm like, for me, you know, trying something else like keto or whatever, the one, I'm like, I'm not going to add meat back in. That wasn't an option for me.
Well, you had been vegetarian for like
Mhm.
25 years, so you weren't going
Right.
to go that route.
So I
Yeah.
wasn't going to go that route. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do? And it,
Mhm.
in retrospect, should have been an obvious answer, but cutting out the processed foods, it wasn't an obvious answer for me.
Yeah.
But once I started educating myself, it became the obvious answer.
Sure. Well, you were really in it. It was really close to you, and you can't see the forest
Mhm.
through the trees sometimes, and
No.
it's not always obvious. It's just not. And that's, taking baby steps, doing one thing at a time. Like it is such a process and it is different for every single person too,
Mhm.
and but it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to be a part of and to witness. And I'm just really like grateful that you were willing to come on and share a little bit of your story with us. And I think it's really going to inspire a lot of other people who were in your same boat because there's a lot of them out there.
Thank you for asking me to talk with you. I feel like I'm like, talking to a celebrity. And tell Luann hello too. When she sent me the tech support email a couple of days ago with the link, I'm like, oh wow, a celebrity has contacted me. I feel very humbled and awesome. So I appreciate letting me share my story too. So I hope it does inspire somebody else.